YouTube, what is going on? We're back with another video, and today I wanted to go over what I think all players, whether you're new or you're still early into the game and you haven't figured out who you're focusing for in your standard, who you're picking on your standard ticket. I wanted to go over these standard banner characters and just break them down as quickly as possible. Not necessarily their kits, but who you should be picking and why, who should be avoiding, and the downsides to getting certain characters, and if you should really be re-rolling if you were to get a character. Now, I do have full-length guides out on all 5 of the standard banner characters, so if you wanted to check those out, those in-depth on team comps, best weapons, echoes, etc., their whole kit, and really how they work. So, let's go over this. In the beginning of the game, now, as I always start off with, the basis of the game is team building, which is this. You're going to have 1 DPS to deal out all your damage and have your main on-field time. Sub DPS, really swap in quickly, bang out as much damage as possible within X amount of seconds, and swap off. And then your support, which is your healer, which is really your support, who's going to be healing you and giving you some types of buffs. Now, realistically, there are only about 2 to 3 healers in the game. There are only about 2 to 3 supports in the game at the moment. We'll cover those in a bit. So this slot is really going to be universally the same, and spoiler alert, you're going to want Verena as soon as possible. Now, and then obviously they give you Baiji for free, which we'll go over, but this is another very solid healer. So this portion you have on lock, even if you don't have Verena, although I suggest going for her. It's these 2 parts that are really kind of where the gray area lies, especially with the standard banner characters. So if we look here, this is the main team you're going to start off with. Within the first 10 minutes of the game, you have this. Trixie would be your main DPS, Yang Yang is your sub DPS, and actually the Spectral Rover is still technically a sub DPS, but once you do your first wish, you get Baiji. Yes, mommy. You'll get Baiji, who is a healer. So this is the basis of the team comps. I'm going to be 1000% honest with you. If you want to be scarce with your resources, I would definitely recommend building Baiji. I would recommend building Yang Yang, and I would hold off on building Chixia, and I would truthfully hold off on putting too much resources into the rover as well, hoping that you're going to get a better DPS. So let's talk about it. At the beginning of the game, I kind of just coasted until I was able to pull, and then I got very lucky, and I got a main DPS off rip, and that's why I built immediately. But now let's look at the standard banner, how this worked. At the time of this recording, there's 3 ways you can get standard characters for completely free. One is you actually get a free ticket, which will not be lasting for forever. So if you're watching this video from 2 to 3 months from now, it's not around, and that's why I'm really not going to try to focus on that portion of this. I'll address the free standard ticket at the end of the video. But the 2 ways that are not going away is over here, there will be a discounted banner, and instead of, it will take 40 pulls. They're going to give you discounts, and every 8 pulls equals 1 10 pull. And pretty much within those 40 pulls, you are guaranteed one of these 5 stars. So for example, I got Calchero. When I got Daddy Kakarot, after that, it gives you the option to pick someone, focus them, and within 80 pulls, you get them. Now, 80 pulls seems like a lot, but it really not that bad, honestly. I've just been using my pulls elsewhere, which I haven't gotten Encore yet. I'm also not in a rush. So here's where it gets interesting, right? Again, I got lucky, and I got Kalkaro, and I had that free 5-star ticket. Initially, Verena was my focus one, but I wanted Verena as soon as possible, so I got Verena off that ticket. And now, I'm just kind of selecting Encore because I already have Johnshin. That's kind of my thought process. Break these down. Encore's a main DPS, Ling Yang's a main DPS, Verena's support, Kalkaro's main DPS, and Johnshin is a mixture of a sub DPS and support. In a perfect world, since the game gives you Baiji already for free, about 30 minutes into an hour, you really want to try to hope you get either Kalkaro, Ling Yang, or Encore. Really to hone it in more, Encore or Kalkaro. Ling Yang is a little bit of an L. Unfortunately, his damage output does not compete with Encore or Kalkaro, and he's just really not as good. It's just the truth. At the moment, with the other characters we have in the game, there's just better options, not only for a main DPS, but synergies for overall teams, and I'm not the biggest fan. If you were to get Ling Yang as your first character within 40 pulls, I'm not going to tell you to reroll. I think that's a decision you should make for yourself, but at the same time, if I got Ling Yang, I'd be a little disappointed, but he's not bad. He's not bad, you know? He is not a horrible character. Just the least, he's just the worst option. Now, Encore and Kalkaro, the reason why I like Encore is actually now technically the best DPS in the game, or the second best DPS in the game, depending on the weapon that you have. So if you were to get Encore off rip, this is a massive W, and we're going to get into her supports. Her supports are 100% free to play friendly. They're actually free. Again, one being Baiji, and then if you log into the game for 5 days, you get Sanhua, which is an amazing sub DPS. So you get Sanhua, and then you put Baiji here. And then you could put Encore here. Or if you got Kalkaro, you could put Kalkuro here as well. If you got Ling Yang, you could put Ling Yang here as well. This is a really solid team if you happen to drop with any main DPS. In my opinion, its Encore would be 1, the most top priority. You should be happiest. 2 would be Kalkuro. And then in DPS, Ling Yang is just ranking at the bottom. No matter what you get, if you are not pulling at all and you're completely free to play, this is the team that you would go with those DPSs. They're very universal. And the reason why they're so good is Sanhwa's sub-DPS capabilities with her ult and her Forte circuit are very good. They're very quick. And it's pretty much, it's hard to not deal a large amount of damage to Sanhwa because she is so valid. But the main thing is, we'll buff the basic attack damage of the person you go on field with by 38% for 14 seconds. Why is that such a massive W? All three of them, Kalkuro, Ling Yang, and Encore, all use basic attacks. So they really set you up for success no matter who you get out of here. So don't stress it if you don't get the particular character you want. But again, if you want to reroll because you feel like, well, I don't really like Kalkuro, let's say, as much as Encore. I think Encore is a little too complicated, although she's not. You know, whatever you want, that's fine. You'll still have these two waiting for you at the end of the tunnel, and you will be in perfect shape. So, and then the other thing with Baiji's outro skill is she'll do the healing, but then the healed characters also have their all type amplified by 15%. She is buffing any type of damage for 6 seconds by 15%. So when you get her full Concerto energy, if you swap back to Kalkuro, you're buffing up Kalkuro. Not only he's getting more heals, but you are getting that extra overall damage. So that is why, again, me personally, if you're playing the game, you do have to wait 5 days to get Sanhwa unless you get lucky and pull. But I would kind of go a little bit light on the resources with the other characters. I would really hold off on spending too much resources on, you know, Rover. I'd hold off spending too much resources on Yang Yang, although Yang Yang is very solid. I'll get to Yang Yang in a moment. But I would really try, and obviously you can't select, right? It's all completely based on luck. But if you get one of these main DPSs, you're looking pretty good. This is one of the best teams just in the game, period. A combination of these two or Verena. Verena is interchangeable with Baiji. Now, what happens if you don't get a DPS? Because again, as I've said previously, team building, you really do want a main DPS on field, and I'm then recommending. Personally, I don't like Chixia. I think there's other characters you can get that are just better than Chixia. So what do? Let's start with Verena first. If you wind up getting Verena from the standard, this is still an amazing thing. And the reason why this is very good for any account is Verena, as I said before, is the best healer in the game. For the Genshin Impact players, Verena is just like Benny. She scales off of attack. The way you could tell is you click on their fortes, their little talent trees, you click skill detail. If you don't see any stats here and just percentages, or even right here, it says attack. If you don't see anything, it means attack. I'll show you an example of someone who scales off of a type that is not attack. If you go to Yanwu, who's a free unit, you click his skill details, defense, etc. So that's just a little FYI. So if you wanted to look at someone's kit, let's say I want to go to Yinlin, this is a new limited banded character, Forte circuit, nothing here. No, all percentages scales off of attack. So just so you're aware. But anyways, Verena, attack scaling healer. So it's very easy to build her because most weapons roll with double attack. For example, now I have the variation on her, but you know, the Jinsho Keeper has double attack. A lot of the blue stars, a lot of the white weapons. So this is very good. If we look at her outro skill, it does what Baiji's does, but it instead of 6 seconds, it's for 30 seconds. So all characters on nearby team gain 15% all type damage deepen for 30 seconds. So all characters are going to get this buff, and it's for 30 whole seconds as opposed to 6. So you can get off a Forte circuit, plus an ultimate, plus probably a resonance skill. You can get so much done on field with your main DPS within that 30-second time frame. And again, 15% attack is massive. Also, the Resonance Liberation, pretty much a TLDR, it marks enemies. And so every time you hit an enemy that is marked, you're getting heals, but you are dealing more damage. So she is just very valid. Now, the thing is, though, Verena herself does not deal damage. You know, if I were to swap, let's say, Baiji here, and we're going to put Verena, and I put 2 sub DPSs. Right, so let's go back to the free-to-play units. I put Verena, Sanhwa, Yang Yang. This really isn't the greatest team in the world. You're not expecting to do big damage numbers with Verena. Verena is there to buff people, heal, and get the fuck out. So in a situation like this, what do? There's a few options. If you don't have the facilities and you're saving your Asterite, you're like, I don't want to pull... this Gion banner is not going to be here for forever. So if you don't want to pull on a limited time banner, even if it's a main DPS, she can technically be considered main DPS as well. But you're like, I don't want to pull for this. I really want to stick with the free-to-play characters, and we don't know what the new 4-stars are going to be, right? I can't tell you what the new 4-star units are going to be, so I'm really trying to go based off of what you have when you launch the game. At that point, you could go Chixia. And I know I said don't build Chixia, but I think you should hold. And the reason why I think you should hold is because I think you should get to see what you get first off of those 40 pulls. If within those 40 pulls, you get someone like Verena or Johnshin, right? Then it's safe to say, okay, I'll build Chixia, because Chixia's DPS output is definitely going to be higher than the Spectral Rover. I'm emphasizing the Spectral Rover. It'll be higher than the Spectral Rover. It'll be higher than Yang Yang. You could make Sanhua a main DPS, but that's really like, it's a little too much. I'm not trying to overcomplicate this. I want to make this as simple as possible for you. So if you were to get someone like Johnshin or Verena, then I would say, okay, go all in with Chixia. The whole purpose, again, is not doing that so you can wait and see, am I going to get someone better? Because you want someone better. But, you know, gotcha luck is bad. So if you get to Verena off rip, I don't think this is a reroll. I just think that you're going to be struggling a little bit, or at least maybe not enjoying it as much as someone like me. I don't enjoy Chixia, but I don't think Verena's a reroll. I think Verena's amazing. Again, best support in the game. That's fine. You just got to work with what you have. You could make that other team work that I just said. Realistically, you could make the Yang Yang Sanhua team work, because anything in this game can work. It's really based on skill and how you build the characters, but it's just going to take extra effort on field as opposed to swapping out, let's say, Yang Yang for Chixia, or, you know, Sanhua for Chixia. You know what I'm saying? You could really run whichever one here. There's no wrong answer. So this is not bad. If you roll Johnshin, similar answer here. You would, now the thing with Johnshin, she's technically a sub DPS / support. And if you get her, I don't think this is a reroll situation either. This might sound like a cop-out answer, but I can't 100% say this is a reroll situation either, due to the fact that it's truly based on preference. Johnshin's kit, her outro skill is very good. Increases res inspiration, which is their ultimate damage, by 38% for 14 seconds. No ult is taking more than 14 seconds, so that is not bad at all. But the thing with her, I'll put her on field real quick, is she is a healer / shielder, but also does these bursts of damage. But as someone said in my comments previously, she's a jack of all trades, but a master in none. Her healing isn't the greatest, and her shield isn't that good, because once you get to endgame content, they just melt your shield away pretty much instantaneously. The main thing about her kit that is very useful is this E. It's her parry mechanic. So she could sit here, right? And then, as you saw, you can let go of the parry, let's say when an enemy attacks you, and bam, it hits you. So she's not bad, and you could make her a main DPS. I actually ran with her as a main DPS in the guide video, but I wasn't feeling it. I think it's the return on investment is just not worth it. I'd rather build Chixia, honestly. It's not for me. If you get her as a reroll, not necessarily. Again, because she's not bad, and that parry mechanic really does help, especially when you're beginning the game, and it's hard for you to actually understand the parry mechanics on boss and enemies. So, not a bad unit, not my favorite, and really probably the second lowest of the bottom tier. Now, I don't have Ling Yang. If you do get Ling Yang, same thing. You're going to swap out. We are going to swap out Johnshin for Ling Yang, and then Ling Yang would go with Sanhua and Baiji. You kind of have like a mono glacier team here. And this team's not bad. It's the best team for Ling Yang, but
Yotan and I will ensure your safety.
He's just not that great. He's really just not that good. If I show you his fortes, let's go to him real quick. You know, so his outro skill is pretty much just dealing glacier damage. His intro skill is dealing glacier damage, and his fortes are just, you know, really dealing more damage for himself and glacier damage. So not the worst thing in the world, and technically you do need a DPS, and I would prefer running Ling Ling over Chixia, but it's not ideal. So now let's go into the scenarios, since we kind of went over these a little bit. You get Encore. You get Encore Ling Yang Calchero. You focus Verena. You get Verena off rip. You focus a DPS. Or if you get Johnshin, you focus a DPS. Pretty simple. Nothing too crazy here. And the combination of characters is really depending on what you want. A lot of them are just going to really be paired with Sanwa and Baiji. Now, again, obviously, if you're rolling on gacha, and let's say you get someone like Gion, right? You rolled on Gion's banner. And you're like, well, really, I don't need a main DPS. Although, technically, you need 3 teams of 3 for the endgame content. So you really do need 3 DPSs. You're like, fuck that shit. I'm not trying to clear the Abyss right now. I don't want that. I already have Gion. Who should I be rolling for? Okay, I would focus Verena. Again, just there's no downsides to getting this character. It sucks a little bit if you get her for the first, because you're going to struggle a bit just with damage output on your main DPS, especially if you are not rolling and you're not doing any gacha. But let's say you don't want Verena. Who do you want after that? Me personally, I'm picking Encore. Encore is a very solid unit, and again, is not, if they're not the best DPS, or the second best DPS in the game. You know, now including this limited time ticket, because at the moment the ticket is still out, right? So if you get, let's say, Verena in your first 40 pulls, right? If you get Verena or Johnshin in your first 40, and you're saying, fuck, I really don't want to build Chixia, who do I pick on this instant selector? My honest opinion is Calcro or Encore. These two are just significantly better than Ling Yang, and they're still good DPSs, and they're going to be doing more than your free-to-play option, which is going to be Chixia. So, you know, that's pretty solid. And then after that, you could always focus Verena. So you get Johnshin as your first, your instant selector would be your DPS, and then after that, you would get Verena. The reason why I would say Verena would be more towards the back burner and the backside is due to the fact that, again, you do get Baiji, and I recommend building Baiji. Obviously, my Baiji's not built yet, but that's because I'm being a fucking whale, and I have other characters. But, you know, Verena's amazing. She just shouldn't be your main focus off rip. You want to lock down a DPS first. If you were to go Johnshin and then you focused Verena, my assumption is you're either going to spend money or you have a bunch of Asterite saved up and you're hoping that you either win a 50-50 on a DPS, or you're hoping that you lose a 50-50 and then get a different DPS. Or you are so stacked with standard wishes, you already are so close to getting your focus. Because that makes sense. It's all hypothetical, and it's genuinely just all based situation on how you like to play the game and really what you're sitting with. But I feel like that is the very basic understanding of the standard characters. Again, you know, if I got Calcaro off rip and then I was focusing Verena, but then they gave out that 5-star selector, I knew I wanted Verena as soon as possible. I could have picked Encore to have a second DPS and kind of like really pre-plan for the end game, but to me that didn't really make much sense, because why would I limit my damage output by not having Verena as a buffer and just getting Encore? I'm not going to build 2 DPSs at the same time. I'm not trying to spread my resources too thin. That's why I went for Verena. Verena allows me to give Calcaro a buff, give every other character a buff and the heals, and just makes the gameplay easier. And then eventually, as time goes on, I could focus on Encore. Rerolling, honestly, if you get Ling Yang or Johnshin, me personally, I don't think rerolling is 100% even worth it in this game, just because of how giving they are to you. But let's say if you got Ling Yang on your first, I would not recommend rolling for Johnshin. You know, if you get Ling Yang as your first DPS, I would just focus Verena. Either focus Verena or pick Verena as your 5-star ticket, and then on the focuser, you pick a different DPS. I really believe these DPSs are going to have more value than Johnshin, including Ling Yang. Because again, she's not going to give you the most return. Now, you can make an argument saying, hey, well, listen, if you need 3 teams of 3 for the end game, and the basis of team building is DPS, sub-DPS support, and right now in the game, we only have Verena and we have Baiji, so why shouldn't I pick Johnshin as the 3rd character on the game for my selector? That way I have all bases covered. You're not necessarily wrong. I'm not going to lie to you. You could go with that line of thinking. I just personally, from my personal use of trying her over the past 2 weeks, have found her to be so super inconsistent. I would rather forehead my way through the hard endgame content with someone else, or just wait for them to drop a better sub support, whether it be a 4-star or a 5-star. She's just not it for me. Other than this parry mechanic, and her burst does do CC. Her Resonance Separation does give you CC. Her whole mechanic is based around building chi and doing this animation, and I just don't think she's really should be at the top of your priority list. So now the one thing I did forget that I wanted to include in here real quick, because it is very important, is weapons that correspond to these characters. So the great thing about this game as well is once you reach Union level 45, which is going to be a little bit of a grind, they are giving you a free 5-star Selector weapon of the weapons that are on the standard banner, which I'll show you in a moment. All of these weapons are good, but there's two that really shine the brightest here. So real quick, if we go here, you can actually select a weapon and just focus it, and within the 80 pulls, you're 100% guaranteed. So just for science, I'm gonna do a quick, just a quick one pull, see what happens for science, you know, because I love you and I'm willing to spend. Fuck, God damn it. Okay, whatever. Anyways, so, pretty much what happens is this: there's the sword, the broad blade, the pistol, the gauntlets, and the rectifier. This covers all standard characters and just all characters in the game. Now, obviously, this goes on based on who you picked, right? So, for example, there is not a sword user on that banner. If we look here, none of these use a sword. She uses gauntlets, he uses a broad blade, she uses a rectifier, he uses gauntlets, and she uses a rectifier. So, you would be saying, well, wait a second, Ethan, there's no sword user there, so why would you recommend the sword? As I've spoken previously, crit rate in this game is extremely hard to come by, and this not only gives crit rate, but it's a very good sword. So let's say, for example, you're not picking a weapon for your main 5-star DPS, although I think you should, but I want to paint all of these to you. This is really universal for pretty much most of the characters, especially free-to-play characters. Rover, both versions of Rover, Spectro and Havoc. Rover can obviously use this. Yang Yang can use this. Sanhua can use this. And just as more sword users come out, I mean, those are 3 units right there off rip that are 100% completely free to play that can get a massive buff from the crit rate, but also the actual stats. Energy regen increased by 12.8%. When resonant skill is cast, increase attack by 6% up to 2 times. So 12% stack bonus, and all of those characters scale off of attack. So you get the attack main stat, crit rate, which is also great, and then an amazing sub passive. So this is not a bad weapon to roll. Again, although it's not something that a main DPS or a support uses from that banner, still keep in mind that is very valid. Also with the gun is another crit rate weapon that is fantastic. It is amazing. If you had someone like Mortefi, this is the best in slot for Mortefi. It's probably the best in slot for most gun wielders. I haven't really tested auto too much, but I assume it's good for auto as well. Crit rate, energy regen when outro skill is cast, increases the incoming resonant attack by 10%. If you have someone like Mortefi and you're swapping out to Calchero or Encore, you know, or even Ling Yang, you're giving them more attack by 10%. All scales off of attack, and you get that extra crit rate buff for your sub DPS. So these are technically the 2 best weapons on the banner. And the reason why I want to bring this up is don't only look at this banner as like, okay, I need to get something from my main character. Because, you know, obviously, you know, if you got Encore, right? This Cosmic Ripples, this is going to be the second best in slot for Encore. The first is Yinlin's 5-star, and this is very good. Increase energy regen, dealing basic attack damage, increase basic attack damage by 3.2%, stacking up to 5 times. It lasts for 8 seconds. It does roll double attack, so you're not getting that crit rate stat, but it's still very solid, and it's a massive boost attack bonus, right? So all of these are good. You know, Abyss Surges are good as well, double attack, similar. Basic attack, this is good for Ling Yang. And then the broadsword is very good as well. Double attack, increases energy regen 12.8%. And when resonant skill is cast, Resonance Liberation damage bonus is increased by 7%. That's good for Calchero because his resonance skill you can cast up to 3 times. And also his Resonance Liberation does a shit ton of damage. So obviously these are going to be the best in slot for a lot of characters currently. But I want to tell you, don't just look at this as, okay, should I get this for my main DPS? Because by the time you're Union rank 45, you're probably going to have a plethora of characters at that time and multiple teams. Now, if you were to tell me, Ethan, I'm rolling on the standard. I got my 5-star ticket. I picked Verena. I was able to get Calchero really early on the initial 40 pulls. What weapon do I go for? I tell you, go for the broadsword. Go for this broadsword because that is going to be really good for him. Or if you got Encore, go for this. So if you got Ling Yang, go for this. But, you know, looking ahead a little bit, if you're not spending your wishes here and you're using that free one at Union rank 45, by the time you're at Union level 45, you probably have a plethora of characters, like I said again. So just pick wisely. Me, personally, the 2 top of my priority list are this Emerald of Genesis, and I already have the Static Mist. I already got it. right? So this is going to be my next one. And after this, I'm probably going to go with the rectifiers. But that really is it. That's the goal, man. I mean, that I feel like is the basis. Again, I didn't go too deep into the actual character kits themselves. Those are completely separate videos. But yeah, so TLDR, hope to God you get one of these 3 first, and then focus a support. Focus Verena. When I say focus support, I say focus Verena. If you get Verena first, focus a DPS. And if you are still playing the game, and you're playing the game when you happen to get a ticket, I would first, before you pick anyone on the ticket, do your first 40 pulls, see who you get. If you were to get Verena or say Johnshin, then I would pick a DPS. And if you're asking me which DPS I could pick, if you want to be super mid-maxy, I would pick Encore. And then if you want to just have fun, I would pick Calchero. And then after that, you could focus whoever. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I love you. Mwah.